Hi, I'm Vandra Masemann. I'm coordinator of the program in Comparative International and Development Education at the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education. I'm also one of the authors in the textbook on issues in comparative education for teacher education, and today we're going to talk about the chapter on gender in education.
And my name is Janigan, and I'm a doctoral candidate in the Comparative International and Development Education program at OISE-U of T, and I co-wrote this chapter with Vandra.
So now I think we need to talk about how we put this chapter together. We were given a very broad mandate just to write about gender in education. What do you think came first?
I think having the foundation of some theoretical background was an important introduction into the area.
Right. And so I wrote that part and looked at the four theoretical approaches: equalitarianism, standpoint feminism, critical conflict Marxist approaches, or social transformationism too, and postmodernism. And so that was quite a difficult part to write, actually, to get it into a format that we thought that would be acceptable to teachers who may not have been familiar with that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why your work was also very useful to them.
Right. And before going into a case study on Eritrea, I thought it was really necessary to look at the statistical information through UNESCO, World Bank, UNICEF that tells us broadly how students are doing in various places, both regionally, nationally, and locally. Mm-hmm. And in that way, it gives us some insight into how students are who is getting into school, who is not getting into school, and how they're doing once they're in school. And I thought that that's an important part of understanding various aspects of how gender in education plays out in those various contexts, mm-hmm. before going into the case study of Eritrea, in which we looked at female students who were in their last year of secondary school and how they perceived obstacles in their lives and supports that they received, allowing them to get this far in schooling when many of their peers didn't get that far.
And did you do that from their own personal perspective?
That's right. Yes.
So you interviewed them?
It was through qualitative research, interviews on their perceived perceptions of their lived experience.
And you're going on to study them further for your PhD thesis, I understand.
That's right. To look at how they perceive the effects of education on their lives 7 years after finishing secondary school.
Great. But then we had to, we realized we also had to make our students, understand that it wasn't as if there was one set of issues for the so-called developed world, mm-hmm. and another set of issues for the so-called developing world. That's why we decided we would add a section on education in Ontario in it'd be the 1800s and 1900s, in which we showed that agrarian society as it was then would still be putting the emphasis on educating boys primarily to go ahead in education. And so we were able to give that comparative perspective through the comparison of the Eritrean case and the case of the history in Ontario. And then from there, we also talked about teacher education and how gender had always been an issue in the profession of teachers in Ontario, and how there were even separate men and women teachers unions in the early days. And then
we traced it up to contemporary issues of gender issues,
right?
Such as stereotyping of certain things girls should be doing, certain things boys should be doing, and how these can play out in the classroom to limit opportunities for students.
Right. And then we also addressed the issue about the fact that gender is not only a women's issue, that we looked at boys' education too, and the whole issue of boys' behavior in the classroom in the early primary years, and how they so often get steered into behavior classes because they just find it a bit difficult to sit still or how their fine motor development might not be, they might not write as well as girls, or please the teacher in the same way that girls seem to want to. And so we do realize that this is an issue that is goes way beyond just advancing the position of women. So we could also talk a bit about how this all fits into comparative and international education. That we do realize that for the point of view of our own students who are becoming teachers, we want them to see this issue in a much wider perspective and link it up also with the statistical material that you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
There's also the issue of global citizenship education, I think, too. To just have a textbook like this in which you would also discuss issue of gender, because that's an issue in the globalized world, that gender relations are an issue all over the world, are issues, micro and macro, all over the world. And the whole issue of gender equality needs to get played out in the classrooms and the teachers' colleges and the universities all over the world.
Mm-hmm. And I think by presenting these various aspects of gender in education in classrooms, we're hoping that teachers will be able to reflect on their classrooms and the way in which gender plays out in their teaching, in what their students bring to class, and to think about how they can facilitate equal opportunities so that all children can work to develop their skills to the best of their abilities.
That's right, and I think that the whole area of comparative and international education gives students just a much broader framework within which to think about their issues that they will confront as teachers. And that is, of course, why this book was written, so that it would prepare teachers more effectively to deal with these issues in the wider world that they now live in. Thanks.
Thank you.